Hello, I'm Doug Atkinson here at Solutions Review, and I want to thank all of our moderators, expert guests, and solution sponsors for participating in these Inside Jam panel discussions. This has been a big year of changes with the launch of the all-new, always-on InsideJam.com community site. For the past 4 years, everyone here at Solutions Review has been leaning in to build the Insight Jam into a celebration of enterprise technology, with best practices, expert analysis, and solution showcases. And we want all of you to join us there to keep the jam going into the new year and beyond. If you haven't joined Insight Jam, please do. And if you already have, take a moment to invite some of your colleagues. And again, thank you all for being here and enjoy today's discussion.
Solutions Review presents Inside Jam, a social media community for enterprise technology. Hello and welcome back to Hour 5 of Business Intelligence Insight Jam. My name is Jonathan Paula. I'm the Director of Multimedia and Events here at Solutions Review. And we have once again assembled a great lineup for this next panel, Metadata Management Challenges and Solutions from all around the globe, especially Europe. Here is my esteemed group joining us now, Irina, Dr. Sue, Ivailo, Casey, Luke, and Susan. Thank you for being with me. Appreciate your time today. Irina, you've graciously agreed to moderate, so I'm going to let you kick off the introductions. 30 seconds or less, tell the audience a bit about yourself and what excites you about today's topic. And good luck.
Okay, nice to meet you. I hope we can enjoy our discussion today. I am a data management professional with over 13 years experience, and my key areas of expertise is setting up data management frameworks and metadata. So it's like even hobby. Why it's hobby? Because metadata is always challenging. So I just now would like to give word to my colleague and let's start our discussion.
Thank you, Irina. My name is Sue Tripathi. I have a doctorate in healthcare and stats. I've been in the area of data analytics, AI tech transformation for nearly 30 years. I'm delighted to be here with this August panel. And one of the key things that's exciting about this particular topic, metadata, is those who are not in data actually are dealing with metadata every single day. So as we unpack our conversation here, I know that we will be talking a little bit about it and bringing people along with us in this journey. So with that, thank you so much. With that, I'm going to pass it on to my peer and colleague, Ivailo.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Well, my full name is Ivailo, and I've been for the last few years heading the solutions unit at OntoText. Background is technical. 14 years before that, I've been a software engineer. And what excites me about today's discussion is that really for the last 15 years or so, metadata, extracting it, juggling it, governing it, and doing all of the tools and frameworks to facilitate working with metadata has been my bread and butter. So thank you, and passing on.
Hi, this is Casey Lai. I am the CEO and founder of Prometheum. Prometheum is a company that pioneered the data fabric. And so a big part of the data fabric is actually metadata, data governance. Data catalog is basically leveraging those capabilities to then automate the creation of data products. And so before this, I was president and COO of a data catalog company called Waterline Data, which is now part of Hitachi Vantara. So very passionate about metadata, being both for governance, for analytics, and even down the infrastructure side. And so really look forward to having this discussion with my esteemed panel. Thank you.
Hi. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Luc Legarder. I'm the CEO of Zinnia, which is a SaaS data catalog platform. So obviously dealing with the metadata, of course. We have more than 10,000 users using our platform in various industries, various countries, for analytics, for data governance, for all types of topics around metadata. So I'm very excited to join this discussion today.
Hi everyone, I am Susan Walsh, the classification guru, fixer of dirty data. I've only been working in data for a modest 11 years, and I spend my days cleaning lots of things like metadata and see the consequences of when it goes wrong. So I'm very much used to having to help people fix those problems and try and help them prevent them in the first place. And I can't wait to have this discussion.
Okay, thank you. So let's start with the first very simple, but it may be also a very difficult question. What is metadata? Because we all know and all agree that we consider metadata as data that describes and defines other data and creates a context. However, some professionals may have different viewpoints. I even heard opinion that we shouldn't make a difference between data and metadata. And I'd like to share with you one example. A couple of months ago, I spoke to a chief architect and we discussed different data management and governance topics, and he told me we don't need metadata management. So for me, the question, what is metadata, is the most important to start with. So I just now would like to pass the word to my colleague, Dr. Sue.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I think, for me, you so rightfully said this, Arena. I think one of the key things here is that there are differences between data and metadata. The word meta itself means something, right? So what is that underlying description and thought process? So it is, when we're talking about metadata, the impact, the business impact of that is going to be large. But I think main thing here is you already mentioned the context, the information. We see metadata surrounded everywhere, every single day. You look at a cereal box and you'll find, information about the content of what that cereal is, right? So it gives you contextual information. It helps you in making an informed decision. So organizing, classifying, and standardizing that information is extremely important when it comes to business. And with that, I'm going to pass it on to Ivailo.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Well, let me put it in another, well, we all know that metadata is data about data, but I would like to think about it as pretty much the librarian of our data world that we live in. Why is that? Well, without metadata, we would have a lot of unsorted books if we imagine a huge library. And if we need to retrieve a certain piece of information, we could spend the entire day searching for it and sometimes only to come up empty-handed. So having the metadata, it's like having a skilled librarian who not only catalogs the information that we have, but knows exactly where each piece of information in each book is, when it was last accessed, what information it contains, etc., etc. So thanks to metadata, navigating a huge library becomes an easy task. So that's how I would put it.
Yeah, I like to piggyback on that because I think discovery is certainly one very useful aspect of metadata, but I think we all know that we live in a world now where not everyone's data is in one format, not everyone's data is in one place or one vendor, and so when data is so fractured and not uniform, you need a single way to find and understand the data. And I think that's not having metadata would make it extremely difficult, but having good metadata makes that process much, much more streamlined, much more efficient, and also enables that discovery to happen across a lot more people, right? So people don't need to know the exact data asset name, the exact table name, the exact column name, for example. Having metadata actually makes it much, much easier for people to search by context, by usage, etc. So that's where I see kind of the importance of metadata is.
I've been working classifying data for over a decade now and never really thought of it as metadata. So I think there's different perceptions of it, I guess, from data versus non-data people. We're all working with it, but I think for the non-data people, it's probably quite intimidating. And you can work without the term metadata and keep a kind of standard consistency. But where something like metadata is probably like massively important is in like pharmaceuticals, when you've got medicine and you need like really strict metadata because someone's life could be at risk. So I think we can't also just, blanket say yes or no to this. I think it really depends on the type of data that you're working with as well.
Okay, thank you very much. So we just now share our viewpoints on metadata.
Oh, look, I think.
Okay.
I would like maybe to add something
Yeah.
about
Okay,
metadata.
sure.
Yeah, we'll agree on the fact that it helps discovery, search for data. But what I would like to add is that the metadata is moving very quickly with data mesh and data products. And the type of metadata we are now in charge of documenting to not only discuss about data assets, but data products, where you have much more meaning around data, which is the infrastructure, the input port, the source codes, the access request, the provisioning. So metadata tends to evolve very quickly in a much more fancy world where maintaining this will be a challenge.
Okay, thank you very much. But just now, I really would like to speak about the challenges with identifying metadata. Because because of my academic background, I also always would like to understand what I'm talking about. And what I've discovered, some challenges I'd like to share with you, but also I would like to know your opinion about it. The first challenge which I've seen with the definition of metadata, it can be of various types, or we can speak about business, technical, and operational metadata, because I have a feeling even in our discussion, we just now move very quickly to technical data lineage. But let's agree that data model is a metadata. Even data lineage is also a very complex construct, which is also considered to be a metadata. So, and it means that we should be very precise what we are talking about. Because I have a feeling when we speak about data management, we mainly speak about metadata management. Let's take a look. Data architecture, application architecture. All deliverables are metadata. Data modeling, data classification is also metadata that we deliver. So this is the challenges which I also would like to tackle on, because we do forget sometimes that even big constructs are also metadata. Look, what do you think about it?
Fully agree, and partially, you have metadata everywhere, all types of metadata, whether it's technical, whether it's semantic, whether it's about data transformation, whether it's about ownership. So the biggest challenge around metadata is, first of all, choose the right classification that you can maintain and keep it alive on the long run. Having a scalable metadata management platform, which is the challenge. Small is beautiful. The more metadata you add to your data, the more complex it will be to maintain. As simple as that. That's the biggest challenge I see. It's
Okay.
automation. It's not only on the technical side. It's this metadata hub, this data corporate knowledge around metadata that is very hard to maintain. That's my stake.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Sue, what do you think?
Yeah, I'll just tack on to what Luke just said. I think, you have to think about who are the users of that metadata, right? So one of the key challenges, you already mentioned about alignment. We see different variations. You had mentioned, for example, about DAMA and DIMBOK and all of that, and just different contexts. But I think at the end of the day, you need to understand why you need that metadata and clarity around that. The second challenge is enterprise-wide, agnostic of what platform or sophisticated tool you're going to be using for creating a data catalog or anything else for your data product. You have to think about, other than the storage, the technical aspect of it, you have to think about the administrative as well as the structural aspects of it. I think Luke briefly mentioned about the structural, or maybe it was Casey who mentioned it earlier, right? I think you have to also think about by having a schema, a metadata schema, do you actually have a metadata management strategy that'll actually help you also in the governance of that data, right? So it's way beyond standardizing and all of that, right? You have to think about large picture. That'll help you in categorizing and how you want to build that schema. And the last challenge I would say is having a defined strategy. That is very, very, very important, because if you don't have an enterprise defined strategy, what ends up happening is each business group has their own version of what metadata management is.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Who is the next? Who would like to share?
I'd like to, yes. I just agree with Luke, and I think actually there's a lot of discussion here around the technical side of this, but I always say data problems are people problems. And so we really need to make the processes as easy as possible for the people who are doing it so that they will continue to do it and maintain it and keep it accurate. And I think that's just as important as all the strategy and the structure and the tech. But I don't know what everyone else thinks.
Okay, thank you. Casey, what is your opinion about it?
Yeah, I think from a practicality perspective, right, what I see customers struggle with is being able to keep up with metadata changes, right? A lot of customers get overwhelmed with trying to update metadata. And the problem is if it's a manual process, you're not going to keep up. Let's be realistic, especially in a large environment or a high change rate environment. So I think that's very important is if you think about, if you believe metadata is important and you believe governance with metadata is important, then you need to have a way to keep up with metadata changes, and it can't be a manual way of keeping up with metadata changes. The second is kind of to what you said earlier, and that is, if you're thinking about the governance and the framework, I think a lot of folks that we've talked to tell us that they spend a lot of time like trying to map out the whole framework and how they're going to govern it. And the problem is by the time they're done, 18 months or 2 years have passed and they didn't really get to implement any of it. So I think one of the things that we all kind of fall into as the easy trap, it's very easy to document. It's very easy to say, I'm going to define this, I'm going to define that. And I think from practical experience, sometimes you have to say, let's start with what's minimal, what's required for us to see how people are going to consume it. Because we're going to learn a lot about how we're going to govern once we actually see how people are actually going to consume the data, as opposed to we're going to hold you guys back and we're not going to define, we're going to just define everything first. And that never goes well. So I've seen that actually hurt a lot of organizations. So just little, advice in terms of just what I've seen with customers to make sure that people don't get into trouble there.
Okay, thank you. Ivaila, your opinion?
Yeah, well, I would like to touch upon a few of the things that Casey and Luke said, because I agree that small is beautiful. And also, as Susan Walsh mentioned, data problems are really people problems. And I think out of all these aspects come actually a few of the challenges that we need to handle. And yeah, small is beautiful, but increasingly in everything that we do and the clients that we work with, we find out that one of the challenges is actually volume and variety of the data. Because with the growing amount of data being created, identifying and properly categorizing associated metadata can be indeed a challenge. And this might be further complicated by the fact that, again, data can come in diverse range of formats, as we mentioned earlier. So one of the things that I relate to with what Susan said regarding being people problems is actually the challenge of interoperability and standardization, which is crucial because different systems and applications might indeed and always use different metadata standards, but this can lead to compatibility issues when trying to share and collaborate with that data. Okay. And of course, there are other aspects that are challenging in practical terms, like privacy and security. Yeah. And last but not least, quality, because quality is increasingly foundational for everything that we need to do with data and metadata.
And if you don't mind, I'd like to add to that, because one of the key things that there are certain industries that are very heavily regulated. So you take healthcare, you take life sciences, you take banking. In that sense, metadata comes easier to them because they're dealing with this day in and day out. If you look at the types of metadata management, whether it's administrative, technical, or structural, they know this because it's frankly being classified for them, right? Agnostic of which geography you're in. And it has an impact on the member, on patients, et cetera, right? So I think in certain cases, it becomes easier for them because they're dealing with it day in, day out. And quickly, I want to pivot to what Casey actually mentioned in terms of practicality. One of the key things is, yes, it's important that we don't wait for 18 months for the entire enterprise to come together and not implement. On the other hand, not having a sound foundation actually has very poor implications down the road. And I've seen that on the other hand, where people have put something together without giving it the thought that was required and without, frankly, involving people, to Susan's point, involving the people side of it who actually are the subject matter experts. So it's not a data or an IT or an analytics, task. It is actually an enterprise-wide task. At a very minimum, it is the business group task where you need to cross-pollinate and make it very cross-functional to have a very sound, basic metadata, foundation or schema. Without that, then you'll just be adding and subtracting, and before you know it, you don't have a sound foundation. So it's a fine balance between time, resources, budget, and the right set of resources, the people side of it. Thinking about the users of that metadata. That is I always begin with, why do I even need this, right? Who's going to be using it? Once that is clarified, then you can bring in your stakeholders, your internal and external stakeholders, and then parse it out to saying, look, we've got 6 days, we don't have 6 months to do this, right?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Sue, because, I really like your approach because I do the same approach. First of all, why we need it, and then what we need to do for that. But just now, I'd like really to try to put us in the position of middle management or business people, because what I've seen in reality, a lot of data management professionals or advanced professionals, middle management, ask me the same question: how can we convince our management that we need data management program, or especially metadata management program? So what are the business reasons to start up the metadata management in the company? Because, I also faced a very interesting situation a couple of weeks ago. I spoke to the team of metadata management professionals who started metadata management program and invented a metadata management strategy. But when I asked them, who are your business users, business stakeholders, they answered me, we don't know. This is an interesting question. So let's make it very simple. We are in position of this middle management. Tomorrow we need to go to top management of our company. How are we going to convince them they need, or company needs, or business needs metadata management? Of course, we can think about data integration, improving data processing and DevOps by reducing redundant data and so on. But I really would like to hear your opinions, because we are always on other side. We know company must have it. But what would happen if you're on another side? So, Sue, what do you think about it? Dr. Sue, what do you think about it?
You asking me or Susan?
Yeah. I took a look at Susan.
I was smiling to myself because in my nearly 30 years of experience, I think I have myself shifted my conversation from technical to structural to actually the business side of it. At the end of the day, you shouldn't need to convince anybody about the value of what metadata management is, right? Unless you are very highly budget and resource constrained. So the value itself speaks for itself. And if we haven't done that, then we haven't translated that well across the board, which brings it back to Susan's point, which is, are you bringing the people along? Now, I want to just distinguish between two customers. There are actually two customers in this conversation. Your internal customers, your internal stakeholders, from the C-level all the way to your analysts. And then you have your external customers that Casey talked about, right? That get to, listen, I'm investing $10 million with you, Casey. Show me the value of what I've invested in. And I can't wait for a year. I need it here and now, right? That is the conversation with C-level folks. So you have to kind of create that balance between the business outcome, of which metadata management is one aspect of it, by the way. It is not the end all and be all of everything, right? But it helps you, it enables you get to that business outcome. The biggest paucity that I see in many different industries across many different geographies is the ability to actually say, by doing this, I'm going to help you and enable you connect to your business outcome. That is a far cry and a far call. And if you're going to stand by it, you better have proof and ability to show that, evidence to show that. So that's one. The second thing is around, again, who are the users internally? Who are going to be the users externally? I think someone here beautifully said it. Maybe it was Luke, maybe it was someone else who said it. Listen, you need to, small is good, right? So you have to also think about what the six of us know is not frankly what a C-level or a VP is going to care. What do you care? Then what does middle management care? And what is that different layer? Based on that, now you can have a conversation and what I call translation of what aspects of metadata management where you can get their input, embed it, and still get to the product and the data cataloging and the data lineage and all of that fun stuff, right? So I think for me, those are the key things. It's the marriage between business, technical, your administrative, your structural, and making sure it's a fine balance that gets, at least enables you to get to that business outcome, showing that value very concretely.
Yeah. And now, Susan, thank you very
Well,
much.
I feel like I've talked a bit. But do want to hear what some of the guys say, but really quickly, because I come from a different space. There's one thing that you might not have thought of that's really important, and it's things like preventing fraud within an organization. And it could be financial, or it could be if you have a warehouse, are things just walking out the door because they're not being tracked properly, or the metadata is wrong, and so and it's going to a false customer. So that's the kind of language and kind of things that the business want to hear, that will prick their ears up and maybe get some attention.
Okay, thank you very much. Ivaila, what are your opinions about that?
Yeah, it's an interesting topic that we touched a lot of the obvious aspects, I guess. Irina, you mentioned data redundancy, overcoming that, and data integration. And these are the probably obvious use cases where we need to work with metadata. Overcoming silo data is the great challenge nowadays that I think every big enterprise is having. And if we need to convince anybody that they need to be working with data, with quality data, and thus handling metadata well, I think it's long overdue, because I think pretty much everyone nowadays in the information age acknowledges that data is really the lifeblood of the modern business world and of decision making. And these might be some obvious use cases and reasons to drive metadata work, but there might be some not so obvious that come and hit us right away with a big force. And that one such driver or an aspect can be compliance and data governance. Because, with stricter privacy regulations that are coming more and more, like GDPR and CCPA, a lot of organizations really need to enforce metadata management to understand data landscape and adhere to these regulations. So data governance and compliance constitute really one of those principal business drivers for metadata management. And this is a crucial thing that we usually overlook until it hits us. And of course, another thing that I want to point out, because metadata might be perceived as a kind of a boring thing, but really it can be the foundation for decision making and business intelligence, because really you cannot make an informed decision without relying on ability to accurately interpret and analyze data nowadays. And really metadata holds the key to this by providing context, quite often a lot of clarity for proper comprehension.
Okay, thank you. And just now, I would like to ask Luke and Casey, after all, how you convince your customers' management? Yeah, what are your arguments?
That's our daily job.
Yeah, let's share. Please share with us.
I spend my life in convincing C-levels to invest in a data catalog, which is a metadata management platform, obviously. And the way we do it very successfully is the following. We push for a bottom-up approach rather than a top-down, which is we take one use case, whatever it is. It can be predictive maintenance, it can be compliance like BCBS 239, or it can be operational efficiency improvement, analytics, whatever the use case is. And we work in 3 to 6 week cycles where we will take just enough data and just enough metadata around it to cover this particular use case from A to Z, and prove to the C-level that there is value around that. Once you've done that, and it's a pretty quick cycle, it's between 3 and 6 weeks, then you enhance the reach of your metadata discipline by adding another use case, adding other data sources or other personas, but you do it step by step. And we promote that. We call it start small and scale fast. And the result is that we started working with corporates where they had maybe 20 people, and they ended up with 1,000 people now, with 400 data stewards, just because we have done that step by step, rather than thinking of the ideal metadata classifications up front for the next 5 years. It doesn't work. Bottom up, agile, incremental metadata management discipline is, in my opinion, what works pretty well.
Okay. Casey, and your experience, it would be great if you can share with us.
Yeah, I have a little bit of a different and maybe controversial take. I actually think a lot of vendors or a lot of folks are actually pretty good at selling why they need metadata management, and that the reason why is it's just like selling any data management solution. You always have to couch it right within the context of a broader business use case, right? And I think if you can do that, i.e. digital transformation, data governance, compliance, et cetera, for the most part, right, if it aligns with an important corporate initiative, it gets approved. I think for the most part, that's, I like to say, I think most vendors have done a decent job figuring that out. There's a lot of literature from the big SIs and so forth. I think the harder part comes after. What happens after you've sold a solution and it gets bought? And the reason I say that is I think a lot of customers I talk to and I see their idea of what the metadata solution was going to do versus what they actually got usually ends up being very different. And what I mean by that is the value that they thought they were going to get, the speed in which they thought they were going to get that value, the ease, the lack, or without the not requiring so many resources to maintain the metadata management. I think a lot of times those get misaligned. So I think that actually ends up being a bigger challenge, in my opinion. You get a lot of customers now complaining about, we've implemented this metadata solution, this catalog. We thought it was going to do X, it hasn't. We thought 1,000 people were going to use it, only 4 people use it. So these are just some of the things that I found to be sort of what, lets the air out of the balloon a little bit in terms of just the disappointment people might have. And so I would say that's probably the area that we should probably do a better job educating, right? Our team educating customers in terms of how to get that value once you actually get past the purchase.
I'd agree. I see a lot of smoke and mirrors, and I think that's why people don't see the value anymore, because they've been promised the world and been delivered about that much of it.
Yeah, maybe it's a nice time for me to share my experience, because I started my metadata management path or journey almost 7 years ago with implementing technical data lineage. Nobody knew what it meant. And I spent 4 months on talking to business people, gathering requirements, understanding, and it looked like that it was good enough. The challenge was that at some point they told me, I have no understanding what you're talking about. So take responsibility to define our requirements, and then we are going to implement it. Data lineage, we implemented data lineage in 1 year period. But then we faced a challenge because nobody still understood what data lineage meant. Nobody wanted to use it. And it cost me almost 2 years coming back to business people and talking to them, what do you need data lineage? And the funniest stuff was when I worked with business people, it happened they didn't need metadata lineage. They simply needed data lineage. They had to know what happened on data level, not on metadata level. It was even a very funny situation when I explained a lot what metadata lineage was, and then I came back to the same term, data lineage. They asked me, but maybe it's data lineage still exists, It was very funny how we professionals use some terms or without even thinking what we mean by that. So for me, the question just now, I'd like really to elaborate a little bit on use case examples, because, one very simple example. Recently, I've joined conference where I heard about data observability. It's such a nice name. I had no idea what it was. But after joining this presentation, I realized data observability is simply a combination of technical, business, and operational metadata. So it's again everything about metadata. Data lineage, knowledge graph, finally data catalogs, business glossaries. These are use case examples. But at the same time, I'd like to talk, for example, about metadata sources. So how we can get this information, especially this question for colleagues that come from companies, IT providers. So what is your opinion? What is your use cases that you use metadata or your solutions? And then again, what is the metadata sources and how do you document it? Which type of metadata documentation do you use in your practice? Casey, would you like to start?
Yeah, sure. Again, I go back to, it's very hard to sell a metadata management project just by itself without being tied to a key business driver or initiative. And so usually if you can find that, then you can kind of work backwards and say, okay, so for example, if we're dealing with supply chain, if the use case is, how do we know in real time what changes we need to make to our routing from our suppliers so that, if there's bad weather, we can reroute the trucks, get the supplies to the right stores in time, something like that. Well, to do that, there's going to be a big element of discovery, right? And so you can work backwards. Well, to have good discovery, to have fast discovery, what do you need? You probably need a strong metadata layer, right? So, okay, then people kind of agree that's there. So I think for the most part, like that approach usually works pretty well if you kind of back into it from that aspect. Now, I think the thing that people need to worry about or think about, though, is you don't want to be in the business of constantly manually updating metadata. You will lose. Your customers will lose. Yeah. I've had the unfortunate pleasure of seeing customers who quit their jobs because their boss said, hey, we bought a data catalog. Why don't you go catalog and tag, 50 million tables? Nobody wants to do that job, guys. Right? Even data governance folks and data stewards, they want to help the business move forward. Nobody wants to tag data and annotate data that no one's ever going to use. And so I think a good lesson learned there is you need to find a way to understand what data is actually valuable in the environment, right? And so there are tools and capabilities, for example, that data fabric where you can actually see what's actually being used, what's actually being requested, right? What's actually being what positive usage or negative usage, and that helps prioritize, right? The metadata management, it helps prioritize the curation, because if you can curate 4 tables a day, but that's the 4 tables that's going to be used in 50% of all queries, I think everyone would rather do that than try and curate 50 million tables that no one's ever going to look at. But unfortunately, a lot of products or a lot of businesses, they don't do that. They just say, well, here, I can catalog everything, I can generate a metadata on everything, but it's up to you to go figure it out. And that's where it ties into the disappointment customers have. Like, wow, we bought this product, we spent all this money on services, it's been 12 months and we still haven't gotten anything out of it. So that's the trap that, I think I will just want to lay it out there so that people don't fall into that pitfall again.
Okay, thank you. I will continue. I'd like to continue with Dr. Sue, but I also would like maybe you can add something about using artificial intelligence in metadata management, because I think it's something maybe very interesting to know how you can do it. So Dr. Sue, please share your experience.
Yeah, so I was actually going to share an experience with a public health agency. I'll keep it very short and quick. 999, I'm not making this up, databases for that public health agency. And I think Casey hit the nail on the head. I think part of it is understanding what data is valuable to you. So one way of doing this that I have found very useful, other than the backward mapping that he mentioned, is actually take a look at your audit reports. Start taking a look at the last 3 years. It'll pull out the common threads where you're not doing well. That itself then reduces your sets of data to a subset of data. And that is the most important subsets of data that speak to the 100 million reports that you have to give to, say, a state or federal agency in terms of compliance, privacy, security, et cetera, et cetera. I will have talked about that before too, right? So there are various approaches by which one could actually distill some very key information where then you can start applying metadata and stuff, trying to boil the entire ocean, and then get to a very, what I call strategic but operational map, not pie in the sky. So this is where the input of the different leaders. So I've got plenty of use cases. I'll quickly pivot then to the AI. So that was indeed a use case actually of how to distill information. And the chief person for that public health agency and talking to the governor, actually they loved it. And so we gave them a 60-page report of here's a step by step, and here's the priority, right? Because now we're drilling it down to 3 key things that you need to do in the next 3 months. And here are the key data sets. So you're still within that metadata, but now you're really getting down to a schema that speaks to everybody. So that now in terms of AI and the other thing that I guess Casey's been around the block too, where we've all seen people actually quit. They're like, I'm not going to do this manually anymore, right? So I think with AI, there are there's human-centered design, there's automation, there's AI. You can train your models in such a way by taking that exact use case that I said, and then start building your training sets, right? Make sure they're always in compliance. Start cleaning and organizing it. Make sure that you're storing it in the cloud if you are in the cloud. Start mining for the data that speaks to that audit report where you are not doing well, right? So there's many different pieces by which you can actually help, AI can actually help you. And I've seen people actually using it. Where people need help, it are 2 ways. One is it becomes very overwhelming. People don't know, where do I begin? This is too big. So helping them distill that down. The second thing is you can't train every single data set. Even within that, you're still talking about thousands of tables. So what are the critical tables? Why are you doing it? It's going back to that same question. Why? Well, I'm tying it to the audit report. It shows historically, here are the 3 areas we're not doing well in. We have to improve our results. Now you're talking about outcomes. Now that's going to help you in your business outcome. Those are the kinds of things that I think where AI has been used and is being used. And I'm going to stop there. I think Luke has a point to add.
Yeah, well, I tend to, if I may, we worked a lot on Gen AI and how it can improve this metadata management discipline. And LLMs can bring a lot, but not where you expect them to bring something. There's a lot of discussions around generating descriptions and auto-tagging and linking business terms to data sets based on LLMs. The problem you have is very, very clear, is those LLMs are public models, and they don't work properly with your own company data and metadata. So in order to make it accurate, you need to pass to these LLMs a lot of your corporate context, including metadata from your company, which can be a danger from a privacy perspective. So the trend of the market now is to have your own LLMs within your corporate, training those models with your content and your context by passing metadata to improve metadata management discipline and automate it. But honestly, it's a lot of, there is no magic formula. Right. We were not convinced by any magic thing about AI for the time being.
Okay, thank you.
That's our finding, at least. Huh?
Ivailo, would you like to share your opinion?
Yeah, well, touching upon AI and LLMs is the obvious thing to do this year, because it wouldn't be 2023 if we're not talking about ChatGPT. Well, it even rhymes. Well, what we've found out in all this hype and the concerns how disruptive it will be is that it's actually quite complementary to everything that we'll do, and it has a lot of practical use cases that we can utilize. At OnToText, we've been always in the business of really linking data with meaning through knowledge graphs. And because really knowledge graphs encapsulate semantics and can represent relationships between data that enables all of us and businesses to add layers of metadata that describe and connect the data in a meaningful way, and more importantly, in a highly contextual way. So that, in effect, enables interpretation of data beyond simple or literal characters, strings, and numbers, and towards an understanding of what these data points really represent in the data world. And the pragmatic output of that can be business intelligence, can be recommendation engines, can be semantic search, and of course, as we've mentioned, obviously, data integration for interoperability. And what we found throughout this year with all of the use cases of utilization of LLMs is that actually knowledge graphs and LLMs can be quite complementary. And our claim is that is because a lot of the strengths of knowledge graphs are really weaknesses of LLMs and vice versa. So we are trying to utilize that potential to all types of benefits that I mentioned. And the really important thing is that LLMs and generative AI can really be useful for generating a lot of metadata that we can enrich our knowledge and knowledge graphs with. So this is
Okay.
what I can bring to the table from practical experience.
Okay, thank you very much. So just now I have the last question to everybody. And the question is, what will be takeaway for our listeners from our today's session? Let me start from myself. My suggestion will be the following. First of all, to understand what you're talking about. What is data management? The second point is, why do you need it? What are the business reasons to start such an initiative? And the third point is really to assess your resources with your wishes, and then start doing small steps towards the success. Thank you. And Dr. Sue, I suggest we will do just now some sort of steps.
Thank you. Thank you. Fascinating topic. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. I think my key takeaways are, in addition to what you already said, are one is that, learn from your practical experiences. We shared, some of us already shared, right? What are those use cases? What can be done today, tomorrow, and the after, right? With your current limitations on budgets and resources. Two, to Luke's point, AI is evolving. So be very cautious and careful about where you want to apply and for what purpose. And you could apply the approach, Arina, that you just talked about. The third one, which Ivelo actually mentioned, is make sure that when you're using AI, whether it's Gen AI, whether it's machine learning, whatever, deep learning, whatever, neural network, whatever it is that you're thinking of doing, make sure that you have clarity of thought of how it's going to augment and supplement to your business outcome. So I'm going to close it with technology matters, AI matters, metadata management matters. But what matters the most is the people who are going to make those informed decisions. So thank you, Susan, for bringing that up during the conversation, because ultimately it's an amalgamation of tech, process, and people, really, and being very clear about why you're doing it and what outcome you're trying to seek.
Okay, thank you.
And with that, I'll pass it on to Ivelo, I guess.
Thank you, Sue. Well, if I need to name takeaways, I would name three. One, adopt a strategic approach, because I think all of us will agree that we need to treat metadata as a strategic asset. It's vital for definition of vision, goals, roadmaps of initiatives and business needs. The second thing is institute data governance, because really the cornerstone of metadata is data governance, and develop and implement policies, processes, and roles at the core of these practices. And third, and as equally important, leverage the right tools. Investing in metadata management tools that best suit an organization's needs, that may include data catalogs, business glossaries, that may include knowledge graph and knowledge platforms as the one that we are also working on. And passing on to Susan.
Actually, I think it's me. Okay.
Okay, yeah.
I'll be Susan for a bit. Not as good looking. I'll admit that. So I think the takeaways that I like to kind of leave everyone with, number one, I think as passionate as we all are about metadata, sometimes we kind of forget that metadata by itself is not as powerful if it's not married with data and business outcomes. And it's hard to prove business outcomes if you can't marry the two. So I would always urge everyone to think about not treating metadata as a silo. It has to be treated as the core, complete ecosystem of your data landscape. So that's number one. I think number two is, the AI piece is obviously I think people who are in metadata management should embrace AI. It should be a catalyst, a driver, a way to open up initiatives and approvals for budgets, et cetera, because it's hard to do AI without good metadata, right? Because if you're thinking about the speed and the scale of AI, proper metadata can actually accelerate that. And also, we talked about the securities of LLM, security issues, security concerns of LLMs. Hey, that's where good metadata actually comes in to kind of offset that. So I think that is something that we can kind of learn and take back to our customers. Like, this is an opportunity, right, to really bring metadata to the forefront, right? And then the third is, and I can't stress this enough, again, is yes, a strategic plan is enough. Yes, buy-in is super important to get in the beginning, but don't fall into the trap of an 18-month long implementation, because you will lose the support of your strongest business sponsors if you do that. So small is good, fast is good, right? Have a plan, but execute as if you have a short time frame, and that's how you'll continue to get support. And I think that is the pitfall I want to make sure everyone avoids.
3 key takeaways, very simple to understand. Metadata is about starting small with just enough metadata, serving what business needs. Second, focus on automation, and you named it, Casey. It's a nightmare to see that companies are spending fortunes in trying to keep up the pace with the content of the data catalog. You should focus on at least 90% automation of your metadata. And third, involve your end users. They know what is meaningful for them. So start small, involve your key users, focus on automation. As simple as that.
Hi, everyone. Oh, I got a bit fuzzy there. Let's do that. There we go. Hi, everyone. My key takeaways would be, yes, you absolutely have to use tech to leverage metadata, but don't forget about the people. But with people come problems, come inconsistencies, and you may have several people in your team all doing the same thing. So what I say is, make sure your metadata has its coat on, like a jacket. Make sure that it's consistent, so everybody's doing everything the same way, everybody's using the same terminology, processes, all that kind of thing. Make sure it's organized, so categorized correctly. Of course, it has to be accurate, but define what that is within the area you're working in. So once you've got your consistent, your organized, your accurate data, guess what? It becomes trustworthy, and then wonderful things can happen.
Great job, everyone. Really appreciate your time. Before we wrap things up, though, I would love to invite each of you to provide some self-promotion for your company, your book, your blog, podcast, LinkedIn profile, whatever you'd like. Let's start with Dr. Sue. We'll go clockwise again and end with our moderator. So,
thank you. So I think for me, my promotion is going to be, you could go to my LinkedIn, which is ST825, and I do a lot of postings there. I write for tech magazines. I do a lot of panel and global speaking sessions. I talk about a variety of topics and data analytics, agnostic of industry. But then there are some core things that are very dear to me, one of them being diversity, equity, and inclusion, women in leadership, women in data and analytics, but it's not limited to women only, anyone who's interested in that. And I think my main plug here is not frankly about a company. It's not about IBM. It's not about any of my previous companies. They're all great. It is about actually bringing people along with you in this journey, especially those who are not in data and analytics. That is the footprint that I'm trying to leave behind, albeit it's no one may know about me amongst the 8 billion people, and that doesn't matter. I'm doing my bit to make sure that we're carving a path, one, for women's voices to be heard in technology, in data and analytics. And the second is that we shouldn't only be talking to data and analytics folks. It's very important we do, but we should try and bring other people along in this journey, because at the end of the day, people are using data and they are analyzing data informally maybe, and they are informed decision makers. So that's the second part of what I would like to put a plug into is around that. And so I'll end there. Thank you.
Thank you. Ivilo, how about you?
Oh, that was inspiring. I would, on my behalf and behalf of OntoText that I've been working for 14 years now, I would like to point out the role of knowledge graphs, again, in enhancing metadata management and therefore in data governance and compliance. At OntoText, we have been providing state-of-the-art technology and knowledge graph technology, which can efficiently integrate, manage, and search large amounts of metadata. And they solve a lot of challenges by creating a semantic layer over data sources, allowing entities and relationships to be linked in a, you can say, intuitive and accessible manner. And it not only improves visibility and traceability across all data, but that approach also fosters better governance, risk management, and regulatory compliance. So that makes it more seamless, and I am pitching for knowledge graphs and AI all the way.
Great, thank you. Casey, 30 seconds or less.
Sounds good. Great. Well, fascinating topic. I think we all enjoyed it. I think one of the things I like to have people kind of take away is, as we think about metadata management, I like people to think about active metadata, right? Because it's very fun, very easy to kind of get into passive metadata and just documentation. But if you focus on active metadata, it's about what the metadata can actually do for you. And that is actually one of the key hallmarks of a data fabric. So if you want to learn more about that, check us out at prometheum.ai, where we pioneer the data fabric. And at the core of it is not just the metadata and catalog layer, but it's also how to use active metadata to solve business problems.
Yes.
Okay, and Luke.
30 seconds. We are a knowledge graph based data catalog. So fully agree with what you said, sir. We help big corporates really in adopting the data catalog. We just passed 10,000 users all across the globe using our platform. So it seems that it's working quite well. As simple as that.
Excellent. Susan, what would you like to plug?
I'm Susan Walsh, a classification guru. You can find me on LinkedIn. We fix dirty data. If you want some further resources, I have a book called Between the Spreadsheets, Classifying and Fixing Dirty Data. So yeah, if you've got dirty metadata, that is the place to check out.
Absolutely. And our moderator, Irina.
Okay, I invite you to join my LinkedIn profile where I share a lot. I also shared my experience in 4 books. I can't show them now. One of them is Business Data Lineage from a Business Perspective, where I shared my experience about metadata management. And other books are going about the implementation, the Orange Data Management Framework, which finally focus on implementing data management and data governance frameworks. And to my sites, datacrossroads.nl and Data Academy for Data Crossroads. So this is who I am and what I'm doing.
Thank you very much, one and all. That was an excellent discussion. Really appreciate your time and expertise today. And for our audience, if you're watching live or in a YouTube playlist, don't go anywhere, because we'll be right back with our next group of panelists to discuss data observability and the AI moment tools and practice as we close out all 6 hours of business intelligence coverage today on Insight Jam Live. Thank you again for watching and listening. My name is Jonathan. I hope to see you right back here in just a short couple of minutes.
Thank you.